A reading from Dom Prosper Guéranger's The Liturgical Year. October 3rd, Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, Virgin. Wonder worker, as is the saint of today, fulfilling her dying prophecy. Quote, "After my death, I will let fall a shower of roses." End quote. She is her own greatest miracle. Her worldwide popularity, to which is united in most cases a devotion which has reoriented many a life, and in all has been a stimulus and an encouragement, is recognized to be phenomenal. It has been said with respect to doctrinal definitions that the faithful have a passive infallibility, whereby their need answers exactly to the definition. The same would seem to be true in the case of devotions and saints. They are given to us when and as they are needed. In an age which worships visible efficiency, which even in the spiritual sphere too often demands substantial material results before it will revere and believe, the saint who has won hearts and souls, as few indeed have done, is no great religious and social reformer, nor, in her lifetime, an apostle carrying the truth to the ends of the earth, nor even a preacher upon whose words crowds have hung spellbound, nor a scholar gathering around his rostrum all that was best in the intellectual world of his day, but a girl who was unknown beyond a small circle of relatives and friends. She had received no special educational advantages. She lived her life in a quiet little Norman town to which few travelers found their way. Still a child in years, but mature already in things of God, she entered the Carmel in the same town, an obscure convent of recent foundation, barren of the historical associations which cluster around many French Carmels. For 10 years she lived a life made up for the most part of religious exercises and simple domestic duties, a life to the average man or woman of the world, colorless and monotonous, in which of necessity talents were wasted and all chance of doing good service to the world forever forfeited. At 24 she died of consumption, but over the simple grave accorded to such as she were placed the mysterious words, "I will spend my heaven doing good upon earth." Shortly before her death, she, Teresa of the Child Jesus, always so humble and simple, had declared, among other startling prophetic sayings, that all the world would love her. During the last 2 years of her life, in obedience to her superiors, she had written in her scanty free time, on poor scraps of paper, an account of her life, and for this, likewise, she foretold a strange success. Today, the story of a soul has been translated into every civilized tongue. The literature which has gathered round the book and its writer would form a library, and Lisieux is one of the great pilgrimage centers of the world. In her book, the young Carmelite explained the theory and practice of her own spiritual life, her little way, the way of spiritual childhood, and when dying she spoke with a strange solemnity and certainty of the mission awaiting her in the eternal future, to teach her way to souls. Too often described as something new, it is, as 2 sovereign pontiffs have pointed out, but a return to the way of the Gospels. Others have walked the same path to heaven before Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, but to her it has been given to show it once more to a self-sufficient, sophisticated world, and that in such wise that to men of good will it may be a sure and safe highway wherein even the foolish cannot err. The way of spiritual childhood stresses again that love, and not great outward achievement, is the fulfilling of the law, that it is character, not career, which counts, that since for most souls sanctity, if achieved at all, must be achieved in a restricted sphere, the daily round of little duties, little sacrifices, common tasks and trials, all fulfilled and accepted perfectly and for love, generous doing, and suffering of the will of God, will provide all that is needful for the highest heroism. Beneath her childlike phrasing, the saint has portrayed a life which calls for an unflagging generosity and courage, which, united with the humility and confidence of a little child, is heroic indeed. Benedict XV has called her way the secret of sanctity. And because she lived a little one, she was pleasing to the Most High. All the world had loved her. Popular acclamation had soon declared her a saint, but the voice which alone can pronounce thereon was not long silent. Her cause was exempted from the years of delay normally required. Pope Benedict XV pronounced the decree of heroicity of her virtues, and by Pius XI, now happily reigning, she was both beatified and canonized at an interval of but 2 years, the first beatification and the first canonization of his pontificate. 2 years later, the Pope declared her the special patroness of all Catholic foreign missions in the same rank as St. Francis Xavier. The following lessons are assigned to the second nocturne of her office. By special privilege of His Holiness Pius XI, her feast is kept in her own convent on September 30th, the anniversary of her death. In the Carmelite order, it is celebrated on October 1st, and elsewhere is transferred to October 3rd. The Church relates her life in the following lessons. Teresa of the Child Jesus was born at Alençon, in France, of respectable parents noted for their singular and constant piety. She was imbued with the grace of the divine Spirit from earliest childhood and desired to lead the religious life. She made an earnest promise that she would deny God nothing which he seemed to ask of her, and strove to observe it faithfully until death. She lost her mother when she was only 5 years old, and committed herself wholly to divine providence, under the watchful care of her affectionate father and her elder sisters. Under such teachers, Teresa exulted as a giant to run the way of perfection. At the age of 9 she was placed in the school of the Benedictine nuns at Lisieux, where she was remarkable for her progress in the knowledge of divine things. In her 10th year she suffered from a serious and mysterious illness, from which, as she herself relates, she was delivered by the Blessed Virgin, who appeared to her smiling, during a novena which she made to her under the title of Our Lady of Victories. Then, filled with an angelic fervor, she began to prepare herself with all care for that sacred banquet wherein Christ is received. After her first communion, she felt an insatiable hunger for this heavenly food, and as if by inspiration besought Jesus to turn all earthly consolation to bitterness for her. She was filled with a tender and burning love for Christ and the Church, and desired with all her heart to enter the order of discalced Carmelites, in order by self-abnegation and self-sacrifice to help priests, missionaries, and the whole Church, and to gain innumerable souls for Jesus Christ, all which, when at the point of death, she promised that she would obtain from God. Her extreme youth was the source of many difficulties for her entrance into religion, but she overcame them by her incredible fortitude of soul, and entered the Carmel of Lisieux at the age of 15. God disposed the heart of Teresa in a wonderful manner to ascend to him by steps, and imitating the hidden life of the Virgin Mary, she brought forth, like a well-watered garden, the flowers of all virtues, particularly charity towards God and her neighbor. She read in the Holy Scripture the words, "Whosoever is a little one, let him come to me," and desiring to please the Most High, determined to be a little one in spirit, and thus committed herself with childlike confidence to God as to a most loving Father. This path of spiritual childhood, according to the Gospel, she taught to others, and especially the novices, whose training in the religious virtues she undertook out of obedience, and thus she set the way of evangelical simplicity before a world full of pride and of the love of vanities. Her heavenly spouse inspired her with the desire of suffering in soul and body. Moreover, seeing that the love of God was almost everywhere neglected, she was filled with great grief, and 2 years before her death offered herself as a victim to the love of the merciful God. Then, as she herself relates, she was wounded by a flame of heavenly fire. At last, consumed by charity, wrapped in ecstasy, and murmuring with all fervor the words, "My God, I love thee," she passed to her heavenly spouse on September 30th, 1897, at the age of 24. When dying, she promised that she would let fall a ceaseless shower of roses upon the earth, which promise she has actually fulfilled since her entrance into heaven, and continues still to fulfill by countless miracles. Therefore, Pope Pius XI enrolled her in the catalogue of Blessed Virgins on April 29, 1923, and 2 years later, after more wonderful miracles, proceeded on the 16th of the calends of June, May 17th, to her solemn canonization. End of the reading for October 3rd, Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus, Virgin.